Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the international high-level event Media and Information Literate Citizens, hosted by UNESCO. This is the third thematic webinar out of 4, and it has the title MIL as a backbone for intercultural dialogue and anti-hate speech. Our aim today is to discuss this topic against the background that how the UNESCO MIL curriculum has been adapted to national context. The discussion is related to the new online resource, Media and Information Literate Citizens, Think Critically, Click Wisely, MIL curriculum for educators and learners. It has now been released and features an updated, revised version of the model curriculum launched back in 2011. Very pioneering work. Within the past decade or so, one of the issues that has significantly increased is hate speech. It's related to the extension of the digital public sphere and the possibilities of citizens to express themselves. In this thematic webinar, we will address the policies, pedagogies, and practices of MIL to ask if and how MIL could work as an anti-hate speech tool, cultivating intercultural dialogue. My name is Maarit Jaakkola. I'm co-director of Nordicom, that is a center for Nordic media research in Sweden. So greetings from the Nordic countries. But today we have a great panel of distinguished media literacy experts from different continents, different countries, to discuss hate speech in a global and local context. National states and regions have their own approaches and traditions to deal with MIL and accordingly hate speech. So it's kind of interesting to know how this, the challenges and the problems and also the opportunities look in different parts of the world. Please feel free to leave any questions or comments in the Q&A box below. If you have a question, please be specific about who of our panelists you are addressing. So let me introduce our panel members today. We'd like to know more about their background and their personal relationship to media and information literacy, which is a very diverse and versatile field. First, we have Professor Paul R. Carr from Canada. Paul is a full professor in the Department of Education at the Université du Québec en Outaouais. He's also the UNESCO Chair in Democracy, Global Citizenship and Transformative Education. His research focuses on political sociology with specific threads related to global citizenship, peace studies, intercultural relations and transformative change in education. Currently, he runs 2 interesting research projects funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, and these give us some relevant keywords in Professor Carr's work. The first one is called Democracy, Political Literacy and Transformative Education, and the second one, Social Media, Citizen Participation and Education. He has written and co-edited 17 books altogether, for example, on critical pedagogy and democracy. And his newest book, written with Gina Thessé, has an interesting title. It's not education that scares me, it's the educators. Is there still hope for democracy in education and education for democracy? Before entering academia, Professor Carr was a senior policy advisor in the Ontario Ministry of Education in Canada, working on equity and social justice issues. So you are very welcome, Paul. And I'd like to ask you, what are the most valuable insights you have gained through your research work with MIL and transformative education? Or actually, I'd like to pose you the question that is in your book title. What is the thing exactly that scares you in the current educators? Is there still hope for democracy in education and education for democracy?
Thank you, Maarit. Wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be with everyone. I think with the research that we've been undertaking for the last few years. We're very interested in social media at a few different levels. One is the consumption of media. We are all affected and infected by social media, even when we don't use it. TikTok, Snapchat, there's so many out there that even when we don't use them, we're aware of memes, ideas, concepts. So the consumption is so vast, and it's overtaken traditional media in many regards, although traditional media lays into these platforms. And it's the production of media. We all interact to some level. We comment, we share, we produce videos, we engage at different levels. And the third and most important part for our research is the engagement. How do people engage with social media? How does it affect them? And what we're interested to know is, what is the effect, the influence of social media on people's citizen participation in relation to social justice and other types of engagement? So social media is so ubiquitous and it has such a wide influence, but there's many different sides to the equation. On the one hand, it's very democratic. We're all out there. There's many social media movements. Me Too, Black Lives Matter, I Don't Know More, Arab Spring, and we can go on. These all have resulted in large part, I think, because of social media. And at the same time, we have a lot of other contrary tendencies in relation to hate speech and so on. So there's a lot of areas to tease out. In relation to the book title, it's not a personal problem. We like educators and we like people. But we've set up these systems where neoliberalism seems to be the one and only choice. We seem to evaluate people on things that we already know, that kids in better off neighborhoods and so on, with better off schools, seem to perform better and so on. And we're very concerned about the potential for formal education to stimulate bona fide, meaningful, transformative democracy. And so these are concerns for us. In relation to media and information literacy, we're concerned about political literacy. Hate speech hasn't arisen because of social media. It's an extension of what's happening in society. And why is there so much hate in society? So on the one hand, it's good, it's out there, we know it, we see it, we can document it. But on the other hand, why is there so much vilification? And in particular, one of the areas that we've been looking at is white power and privilege, whiteness. What is it about white people in general? And I don't mean to vilify white people, but why such a robust, cantankerous onslaught? And we see this now mobilizing in political regimes in North America and Europe. And often, I think the most insidious forms are not the frontal forms, but more subtle, placing into question immigration, other forms of inequity. And so we've now created these words like cancel culture and so on. Political correctness, it was all there before. It's a way of trying to understand, these social movements resonate with many people, but our political systems are very dichotomized. And I guess just to end, in relation to the work in our UNESCO chair, we're very concerned about democracy. We have what we call normative, representative, hegemonic democracy, but fewer and fewer people are participating in these elections, and the institutions are very much questioned. So in a way, what's happening in social media is a representation of how many people wish to mobilize. And I'm looking forward to the hate dimension, but it is everywhere. And when we think of racism, we're not in a post-racial society. We're in a highly prolifically racial world, sadly. So that's my introduction, but looking forward to the comments from everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. And you mentioned many phenomena in the social web that are very relevant and also call for the update we have in the middle curriculum now. So thank you. We'll discuss these things later, but as the second panelist, we have Professor Milena Dragicevic from Serbia. She's a professor of media and cultural studies at the University of Arts in Belgrade. She's also the UNESCO chair in cultural policy and management. And she studied as a lecturer at the Faculty of Dramatic Arts in Belgrade in 1978, and for decades now she has been dealing with media ethics, researching the impact of media, hate speech and populist political communication in social, political and cultural life. She has also been engaged as an activist and in activist contexts and created numerous training courses for teachers, museum and library workers and cultural activists. You are very welcome, Professor Cetic. As a cultural scholar, your focus has very much been on the challenges in the Balkans regarding possibilities and obstacles for intercultural dialogue, which is the topic of today. Initially, you were brought to issues of media literacy when the so-called media war started in socialist Yugoslavia. Could you tell more about your background, what brought to the media literacy issues in your region?
In fact, you are very right. Being brought in a multicultural state, in multicultural environment, you're used to have these two different discourses, one official one, very politically correct and so on, and one which is a little bit hidden, but sometimes, unfortunately, was seen as a space of freedom when you criticize the other and speak about repression as the only our ethnic group. Even our mine was majoritarian, but still these voices of like we are repressed, everybody else is supported, and so on. But then, when after Tito's death in the 1980s, media freedom started to be gained, unfortunately, and that what turned me from cultural studies more to media studies, we saw instead of democratization of media, immediately this freedom was misused for raising the ethnic hatred, different sorts of manipulation, taking elements from history, but in different moments of history, always one ethnic group was repressed and the other was, I'm speaking from medieval ages till today. So, but every ethnic groups through media created feuilletons, created like, we are going to discover for you how we have been exploited, tortured, and so on. Thus, I joined the activist groups immediately at the beginning of 90s, and we did a lot of research on media war and hatred. That's how we call it in that time. That was exactly before military war started. All media in the country has been really involved, like they say, in investigative journalism, but in fact, it was not that. It was hatred speech. But through Radio B92, which was the activist radio, we created also media forums to fight against those manipulative discourses in media, against those vocabulary. So different sort of jingles that acted as a tool, as a reminder, as a just to raise awareness that things are not exactly as they are presented in our press. From Slovenia to Macedonia, we cannot really say, except in every of these countries, few free media, but with a very small tirage, with a very small outreach. Mostly it was local radio stations, not TV stations in that time, that fighted against this hatred speech. And hatred speech was really used on a level to provoke the other, to offend the other, to deliberately use the words that you know that they are going to hurt the other community. Shqiptar for Albanian, Tsiganin for Roma, etc., etc. And we can, or in Croatia, the word gypsy, Tsiganin, was used for Serbs to offend them, and so on. So every nation had, or for Slovenes, there was invented a term, Austrian servants or something like that. So, but this the problem was that it was not only on social networks, that was even before social networks. So we cannot accuse social networks for everything. It was even in public media, in official media, in spite of the fact, I found it very nice that Professor Paul Carr is from Canada, because our media studies completely were developed from works of Howard Innis, Marshall McLuhan, Roland Lorimer, and many Canadians that developed. So we had theories, we had researchers, we had investigative journalism and so on. But unfortunately, throughout the Balkan space, and this is still present in most commercial, most tabloid, most read, and most watched or listened media, this hatred speech seems to be raising the tirage, the number of copies, raising the interest, because it's appealing on people's emotions. It's appealing to the sense of justice, because everyone is persuaded that only his group. It can be also, for example, I've heard a lot of hatred speech by majoritarian people, heterosexuals, against the LGBT community, like they're privileged. Europe is stimulating, all the money is going to their associations and so on. And then it's expressed without any, of course, data and so on, expressed with such wording for this community. It's same misogyny, hatred speech toward women is so widespread that sometimes those that are using certain examples, sentences, and so on are not even aware. Of course, now I'm speaking about all negative elements, but there are a lot of strong forces in society, from, let's say, universities, academic sphere to civil society, that are fighting against hatred speech, that are finding new instruments of intercultural dialogue and mediation to be not only instructive, but to show other possibilities of public communication. But I assume later on we are going to have more time to discuss about positive examples.
Definitely. Thank you, Professor Milena Dragicevic, about this historical perspective. There are a lot of lessons learned to be taken to the current conditions, and to address the power of discourse. So thank you. Then from Europe to Africa, our third panelist is Dr. Olunifesi Suraj from Nigeria. He's senior lecturer in the Department of Mass Communication at the University of Lagos. He's also the national coordinator of the UNESCO-initiated Universities Network on Media and Information Literacy, and member of UNESCO Global Experts on Education for Countering Extremism. And he has also been in a number of other UNESCO engaged in a number of UNESCO related tasks. He holds a doctoral degree in information science from University of Ibadan and a postgraduate degree in mass communication from the University of Lagos. And his publications and areas of research interest include media and information literacy and intercultural dialogue, social media and journalists, safety of journalists and freedom of expression, so very relevant for today. Dr. Suraj is the Executive Director of African Center for Media and Intercultural Dialogue. So welcome, Dr. Suraj. And the same question to you. What made you interested in MIL, and especially what kind of topics are relevant in your country right now?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's nice being here. And I must say that I got interested in MIL because I feel that is a way to empower the citizens. And like I always say, we have come to a society where the society is shrinking to digital space, to online space. And so there's less interaction, there's less, and we are coming to a situation where cultures are amalgamating together in a particular civil space. And so people come from different culture, different background, different race, and they need to understand each other. They need to engage, they need to interact. And so what I have been stressing all this year is that media and information literacy without intercultural dialogue does not actually have any meaning, because we must dialogue. We must dialogue stereotype. We must dialogue, we must recognize differences, that people have differences. We must accept that differences. We must live with that differences. We must have that tolerate, we must tolerate people based on their differences. We must have that intercultural sensitivity. We must be sensitive to culture, and we must engage people based on their culture. And I think this is where the conflict comes. Conflict comes when media stereotype people. Conflict comes when people don't want to recognize people's differences. Conflict comes, and this is where the hate speech comes. So when you look at the issue of propaganda, all kind of stuff, they come from people who have political intention, and they foster this intention on people. So in a kind of way, I would say that there are three ways I'm looking at intercultural dialogue when it comes to media and information literacy. One, can we make free speech without going to hate speech? Is it possible? How can citizens express themselves, freedom of expression, without actually making an hate speech? Thirdly, is there any way that government can come out with a policy to regulate hate speech without bringing culture of silence? That is, without bringing about self-censorship on the part of the citizens? Is there any way that citizens can express themselves and the people can dialogue in such a way that they understand what anybody is saying? Then the fourth one that I'm really interested in is that, can we use the same social media? Because social media, like Paul Carl said, social media has been the echo chamber that promotes hate speech. Hate speech has always been there. If you go back to the First World War, the Second World War, hate speech played a very prominent role. And like Miliana said just now, hate speech, you find hate speech in other public media. It's always been there. But now we have a digital medium that aggregates all this speech and bring it to focus, bring the narrative to focus and the extremist content. Now the question is, now that we have come to live in this space called social media, is there any way we can use social media? We can bring about credible messengers, people who understood hate speech, who can analyze hate speech, who can see beyond the motives of those who are propagating hate speech, and who can be able to dissect hate speech and be able to counter it in such a way that they make the speech, it kind of does not have the effect that those who are behind it want to make. And I think this is where the problem is. The hate speech will not leave. That's the truth about it. Hate speech will continue as far as social media. Hate speech will continue as far as people who are racist. Hate speech will continue as far as people who want to, put up their own narratives. But the issue is this: people must be media literate. People must engage, and they must understand hate speech so that it does not affect them negatively. I think that is where the whole issue is. And I've done a lot of work on this. I've written paper on using social media for de-radicalization or de-extremism. I've also written paper on intercultural dialogue in a multi-class environment. That is just like Nigeria, that have diverse culture, diverse religion, diverse political narratives. So in a classroom, how can we start training these children so that we produce graduates who are global, who have the orientation of the global citizens, who can engage not only with their own tribes, with their own ethnic, but with everybody around the whole world? I think this is where we are actually very down to.
Thank you, Dr. Olufnesi Suraj, for adding a new perspective. Finally, to our fourth speaker, who is Bayan Tal. Mrs. Tal is a media literacy specialist with more than 40 years of experience from Jordan. Most of her career has been focused on supporting and empowering a new generation of young journalists and students with the skills they need to advance their careers and support their rights and freedoms. And she has spent the last 5 years at Jordan Media Institute, where she has led the design and implementation of donor-funded projects related to media communication and MIL. She has also been active in policy work. She has designed and led the first MIL project in Jordan in 2016 and assisted in drafting the national strategy for MIL in Jordan. So welcome, Mrs. Tal, and what's your personal relationship to MIL?
Thank you so much. I'm so honored and grateful to UNESCO for this opportunity to be among these amazing, distinguished scholars. I started my obsession with media and information literacy in 2016, when a year after I joined the Jordan Media Institute, because we felt it is a much needed for Jordan on many fronts. First of all, on the fact that we needed people to appreciate good journalism, because we're a journalism academic institute. And we could see that the media in Jordan and generally in the Arab world, because we also have students from the Arab world, was in a very bad shape. There's a lot, it is polarized, it is mainly owned by governments. There's not a lot of freedom for journalists to work and do their job properly, and not a lot of freedom for people to express themselves. So for us, media and information literacy is a tool for people, and because there's a mushrooming of social media platforms in our part of the world, it was important for people to be able to not just consume, but produce media and be active and wise users and consumers of media. And all these skills are under the media and information literacy. So it just so happened that UNESCO had issued a call for proposals that was funded by the European Union. And so I applied, I drafted the proposal and I applied, and we got the project. And so the idea was to basically just advocate media and information literacy, but we went far beyond that. We drafted a white paper on MIL for Jordan, and we analyzed the curriculum of 2 universities in Jordan. And we worked with these 2 universities, and we did a pilot project with 4 schools. Actually 8 schools, 4 girls and 4 boys schools. And we trained the teachers in these schools, who went back to their schools and started media literacy clubs for students who wanted to volunteer. It was not part of the school system. The classes took place either before school or after school. Because the project was so successful, the Minister of Education at the time came and visited the students, and he talked to the girls, and he was so impressed with what they were saying about the skills they acquired and how they were able to even help their parents who were arguing over a picture on WhatsApp, because it is very popular, especially with parents. So they were able to tell them how to check that image and the story behind it and all that. So they became very confident of the way they were using media, and they transferred not just to their parents, but to their peers as well. We were lucky enough for that Minister of Education to become the Prime Minister. So when he did, it was an opportunity for us to just go ahead and draft a strategy for Jordan, where we can include it and integrate it into all sectors. And it was adopted as a priority by the government in 2019. The idea is for MIL to be integrated into schools, universities, youth centers, and the civil society organizations and the media. So it's 4 components. We've been very successful in acquiring and getting funding for all these components, and have been working diligently since then to integrate it. We have integrated MIL into 3 classes in Jordan, grades 8, 9, and grades 7, 8, and 10. And now we're working on curriculum for the rest of the grades. We've trained hundreds of teachers. The Ministry of Education is on board, and we're very lucky to be leading the region in integrating MIL on such a large and national scale. So to bring it back to hate speech and press freedoms, I think it's important that because of the exercises that we use, the examples that we use, we raise awareness on hate speech. We use examples from our own culture, from our own society, and we use role playing. I think it's very helpful. It's very constructive, and they become aware of the impact of hate speech or bullying on the recipient. And because we have also a media credibility monitor in Jordan called Akid, they also do reports on violations by media organizations and journalists, and we call them out when they do that. And so it's important to maintain the quality of journalism, and for people to appreciate good journalism. I think we can work from the bottom up and have a generation that appreciates good journalism and pushes for freedoms, because we're constantly on the lower scale of press freedoms. I think it's important for generations to appreciate these freedoms and appreciate good journalism, and we can do that through MIL, definitely. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Bayan Tal. This is very timely because press freedom plays a central role when we talk about hate speech, intercultural dialogue. It has the institutional side. And next week, on the 3rd of May, is the World Press Freedom Day. And World Press Freedom Day has its origins in a UNESCO conference in Windhoek in 1991. And today is the day to start the celebrations with a conference hosted by UNESCO. And this year's theme is quite appropriately, as you said, information as public good. And this specifically highlights the MIL capacities that enable people to recognize journalism as a vital part of information and as a public good. I guess if we talk about, before going to the specific question of hate speech, if we talk about the institutional conditions for freedom of expression, and which is increasingly challenged. Different countries have very different conditions for developing MIL. For example, in the Press Freedom Index, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, the Nordic countries, hold the top position. Canada ranks as the 14th, Serbia 93rd, Nigeria holds the rank of 120, and Jordan 129. So many of you have been engaged in capacity building for journalists, and journalists are also encountering hate speech. So what do you think, what should be done to improve the conditions of freedom of expression? Do you have any examples from your countries, maybe in journalists training or in developing a specific type of news literacy to increase the transparency of journalism and also the understandings of the audience towards what journalism is? Maybe we could start by, if you want to answer this question, because Jordan was not at the top of the list. Bayan Tal.
Thank you. It's very tough. It's very tough. The thing is, I think it's 3 things. We need good education, good journalism education. Because the way things are, journalism education is way below what is required, way below the market, way below what is needed out there, does not represent what's happening in newsrooms across media organizations. So we need to reform, and we basically need a white revolution in journalism education. We need partnerships. It's very important to support civil society organizations in our part of the world who are doing the good work, who are trying to push for freedoms, to push for these skills for the public. We need to support independent media organizations who are also doing excellent work in Jordan, but are also facing the challenges of, restrictions and funding, because it's very difficult now to create the business model that will give them, they can continue the income where they can continue to do the work. Journalism is expensive work, and it's very important that they get the support they need. And we also need, finally, the political will. If the political will is not there, no matter what we do, it's always an uphill struggle.
Maybe since two of us are guilty, two of us are guilty, Nigeria and Jordan. So maybe two of us now should now speak. Actually, she spoke very well from Jordan's side. From Nigeria's side, you must give a kind of credit to the activists, the NGO, the civil organizations in Nigeria. For instance, like he sharedly mentioned about political will, we don't have political will in Nigeria. I must confess that, because we have people in leadership who are promoting hate speech bill and social media bill, anti-social media bill. And when you look at the content of hate speech bill, it's ambiguous what definition of hate speech actually is. When you speak against government, it's considered as hate speech. Government use regulatory bodies to sanction media houses for expressing what you consider as a normal free speech. That's why I said that we need to differentiate between hate speech and free speech. So, but the NGO goes to the occasion, they fought government to drop the hate speech bill because they felt that that bill was not in the interest of the masses. It's to protect governance and the individuals who are using that law to clamp down on freedom of expression, to clamp down on online narratives, to clamp down and to create a kind of culture of silence. And so the NGOs in Nigeria, organization, and we also, I'm part of them, activists. I appear on TV several times and condemn the bill and rose against it. Now we're able to shut down a speech bill. Now also social media bill, that is to monitor social media, to contain it, was also shut down. So you see that, I think if you use the index very well, Nigeria civil organizations, the NGOs, have been foremost in defending freedom of expression, and so far they've been able to achieve it. And I must mention an organization called SERAP. SERAP has been taking government to courts and saying that you don't have the right to do this, you don't have the right to curtail speech. So we're in part of this world. Nigeria, where we may be down because of we don't have political will. But I must tell you that the citizens are aware of their rights. There is increasing awareness to freedom of expression. And when you look at narratives right now in Nigeria, you see the so-called anti-SARS, and you see something also coming up right now where the online social media are coming out with information that will not stay in the public purview, that the government want to silence it. So one way or the other, I think the missing link, the negative, is the political will. But I will tell you that in terms of rights, citizen rights, freedom of expression, pushing for those narratives, the Nigerian government, the Nigerian civil organizations, the NGOs, the academics have been on the forefront to fight. And we're not alone. Many journalists have been jailed, but yet we are campaigning against it. And so the civil organizations here are very, very active in defending freedom of expression.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, you're talking about hate speech, and we should be talking about hate speech. But according to the United Nations, there's no internationally shared or legal definition of what actually is hate speech. And the characterization of what is hateful is also very controversial, disputed. We tend to have many descriptions, terms to capture hate speech. We talk about intolerance, negative stereotyping, exclusion, discrimination. You have also mentioned many terms to denote this phenomenon. How would you define hate speech, and how should it be detected? What about Professor Milana Cesic?
I think that hate speech can exactly be defined as deliberate intention by message and discourse to offend, humiliate, ironize the other, and to put it in a very, position that the other do not have neither access to media to defend itself, neither, or even if succeed somehow to appear on some media, it's going to be again 10 times more paid back, this kind of public humiliation, ironizing, and so on. And I would like to underline what Suray was saying about importance of civil society in fighting for the, let's say, culture of speech, dialogue, and tolerance. And the problem, of course, you mentioned that, is political will. In fact, I have to say that we have good journalists, that we have excellent education for journalists. I personally was, by pure chance now, first time telling that openly, I was 15 years ago or something in the accreditation jury for accrediting the colleges for journalism and so on. It's a very high level of education, included training, practice, and so on. But it's not journalists that are introducing hatred speech in the public. It's unfortunately our politicians. Sometimes it's even our ministries. And then you have those people might consider them journalists, but the top rank of editors in public media or in commercial media, they take over entertaining function, taking exactly those elements of hatred speech and then betting on it, continuing on it, furthering that, and so on. So it's a very interesting phenomena that what we need courses for politicians, not for journalists, against hatred speech. Plus, we have another issue which is very dangerous. There are courses for young politicians held mostly by world-renowned marketing agencies. And those courses are only how to raise popularity, nothing else. How to raise popularity among public opinion. And now they're getting lessons for really highly competent marketing advisors. There is marketing for political parties in Serbia are led by foreign companies. So we have excellent marketing agencies, but our one are very aware of the impact of hatred speech. Foreign, they don't care. They are paid to make the most popularity they can. So what I would like to say is that that's the reason why we are unfortunately on 93rd place. We don't have media with the national frequencies that are free. They're commercial media. That's something, for example, that's interesting to say, that Council of Europe and European Union didn't get. Why intellectuals in Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia were against privatization of local media? For us, it was clear that it's not going to detach media from local authorities and control. Or contrary, private owner now of this media is not interested in any public good, public value. He's interested only in having good links with local or national politicians for his business purposes. So now commercial media are more controlled, more propagating hatred speech and banal propaganda than public media. And that's the paradox of democratization. And that's something that we lost quality on local media. For example, exactly intercultural dialogue and so on. Independent cultural scene of Serbia, civil society organization, is every year making analysis to whom is given public money on the public call competitions, both for media and for cultural organizations. In both cases, you see that the public money is given for tabloid media, for really kind of not for the real investigative journalism, or for experimental artistic work on the other side. Only foreign money might come to help projects of intercultural dialogue, for example, theater performances, which incorporate Albanian and Serbian actors together, which deal with Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian disputes, memory conflicts, these differencing perceptions and so on. But public money in any of those Balkan countries is not going to support projects, artistic projects of intercultural dialogue or media investigative journalism that will endorse intercultural dialogue.
Thank you, Professor Milana. How about Professor Carr? Do you have any alternative definitions of hate speech? This was a very extensive and good one. Or how do you see what kind of societal development caters to hate speech?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Milena. A very comprehensive and interesting discussion. I think that hate speech is, it has many forms, and I would like to just step back a second. And I think the field, the profession of journalism, I'm not going to say it's on its knees, but it has been significantly diminished. And I think the control of mass media, political organizations, and this is why there's a flourishing of alternative, independent media outlets, citizen journalists, activists around the world. There just isn't a lot of hope in kind of formal journalism. I'm not saying that they're not good people doing good work like educators in schools, but the framework. And I think, as Chomsky has said, you can say whatever you want as long as it's within these two little goal lines. And just as an example, for example, in the United States, there are 20 soldiers or veterans who commit suicide every day. And in 2020, in the midst of this global pandemic, it was the world's greatest spending spree on military armaments. Now, these stories are not really revealed. They're not really critiqued. They're not really taken up. And we could talk about many other stories of minority groups that are vilified and homophobic and Islamophobic and anti-immigrant. So I think that it really speaks to a broader context. And what Milena was saying, I think in a way relates to some of the work we've been doing, is that normative democracy is not about democracy. It's the word democracy, but it's about winning. It's a horse race. And how you can win is by polarizing people, vilifying people, eliminating people. And this is a tendency now all over the place. And we've replaced the notion of bona fide, meaningful, transformative democracy with this notion of two parties and who gets elected. And then you have all of the political will. So in a way, I'm not very hopeful of giving training sessions to politicians. I think that the system has to be reformed. We have to think of other ways through education, through social solidarity, to really invigorate public debate, deliberative democracy, where people can discuss without killing one another. In relation to hate speech, for example, in Canada over the last several years, there's been some excellent work on radicalization. And how do people get radicalized? Why are they so disaffected? And my own feeling is that many people have always been disaffected in gangs, in, for genocides and others. So it's not just those select people that wish to go to certain countries to fight against other countries. But the question I have is, what is it in our societies? Why are so many people so apt to accept and engage with these messages? On the one hand, many people would say, when you're born, you're not born racist, sexist, full of hate. So where do you learn this? Is it culture? Is it education? Is it political systems? I think people have to be somewhat vulnerable to these messages. I'm sure that everyone on this panel, I could give you every hateful message I have. I'm not sure if you're going to join a hate movement along with me. There's many other conditions and a lot of disaffection. And when we noticed in the United States in particular, it was quite brutal on January 6th with this insurrection. Why so many people, tens of millions of people that support concepts? If we were to throw out some of the concepts that they believe in, a lot of people would find that repugnant. But this is almost a majority of people. And in many other societies, there are white supremacist hate groups in Scandinavia, in France, in Britain, in Canada, around the world. Now, why are they there? The social media gives them resonance, gives them a platform, but it's not the social media that created these hate groups. What can we do about it? I think we have to really rethink our political systems. This, winner gets all, one candidate wins everything is probably not very helpful. Education has to take up media literacy in different ways. And there are some very, very good work. My colleague Michael Hoaxman and others are doing excellent work, media literacy. But I think we have to think, Paulo Freire, who's inspired our work, spoke about reading the world beyond reading the word. And I think often in media literacy, sometimes we emphasize how to use tools and how to develop understandings of tools. But how do we understand, for example, fake news? What is fake news? Why is it fake news? From who is it fake news? And I think that engagement is really the key. And so this is why, on the one hand, nobody really likes hate speech, but on the other hand, it's important to engage. And some of the research in social media indicates that people intersect within their network, but not outside. So we have a lot of linkages with people who agree with us, and often when there are disagreements. So how do we engage with these people? But I'm very surprised in a way, for example, even in Canada, there are so many hate groups and so many movements, even in relation to the pandemic, so many conspiracies. But often these conspiracies lead to other types of thinking that are connected sometimes to xenophobia. So I think this is where I would situate my thinking, is not to look for a Ku Klux Klan with a white hood, but other types of thinking where people don't want to see intercultural diversity. And how do we address that? So I think the political system, in a way, we have to really think about civil society and social movements as well.
Oh, yes. So you think that you mentioned many different groups, vulnerable to hate speech, and it's a challenge how to prioritize them in the mill work and how to reach out to them, how to make an impact. Now we have been talking about the conditions and the policies. Let's get to the concrete question of pedagogies, both in formal and informal educational settings. Do you have any good examples? Because now we have to focus for the positive examples, as Milena stressed at the beginning. Any examples of good or best practices that have really made an impact in your country combating hate speech? Please feel free to say your word.
From Nigeria. Yes, we have some good example, but I would say that we should not major on best practices. We should talk about continuous best practices, because best practices put a kind of slab on what you can achieve. So in Nigeria, for instance, some of us, I think we came together, academics and non-academics, we come out with a comic book a comic book that teaches young ones, because we see that children are the most vulnerable. Because once their mind have been shapen, they go with that mentality all the way up. So what to come up with is comic books, and those comic books I think given to UNESCO have been shared around the whole world about illustrative diagrams and on intercultural, alignment, how you can understand people's culture, how you can relate with them, how you can frame your language so you don't create tensions and come society. That is one. Secondly, we came up also with a new game about critical thinking. It's a game where you play the game, and when you get to a point where you are going to fake news or hate speech, that game will draw you back. So that one also is about talking about you should understand people who are behind the information you are consuming. Just like Paul said, there are so many people around the world who are championing hate speech, but you need to understand as an individual, where are people coming from? What is the ideology behind what they are saying? Once you understand that, be able to engage with them. Now, thirdly, what also we are doing is we have many clubs, like somebody said on this club, we go on the whole schools, and these schools also we teach them what literacy, how to understand books, how to read, how to match people, how to understand hate speech. Then the last one is what UNESCO said. Says, since war begins in the heart of men, is in the heart of men. We must build the bastions of peace. So what we have been doing, I believe that project is make curriculum. Make curriculum in schools, especially in the university system. And we are pushing it that it should either be a standalone course or it should be part of the courses where people are taught and how to relate with people and how to think critically, how to respond to intercultural dialogue between them. And these are the issues. So many more. But because of time, let me just allow that people to talk. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good that you are highlighting the importance of the MIL curriculum. Any other best practices or examples, Milan?
I might add up very quickly. This is the most recent is the manual for parents that was developed in a joint action of civil society and the Ministry of Culture and Information. And I think that's something really useful, which incorporates the whole chapter, let's say, about hatred speech. But very important actions are done by several of our museums, Museum of Yugoslavia and Museum of Contemporary Arts, that enables a view. For example, it was 100 years of the creation of Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and they enabled to be seen for the first time ever in Belgrade, in Serbia, position of Montenegrin side, how from their side looked this, let's say, joint venture, and so on. I think this work, Museum of Contemporary Arts, again, is representing authors from now across the borders. And this is, I wouldn't say just building bridges, but it makes people more susceptible to understand the other, as well as it was done by the convention about the language, signed already at the beginning by 300 scholars, now by thousands and thousands of people, about, and that's against our politicians, or all sides, about a common language with 4 names, because that's contested by our politicians, that's the common language, but we do not translate each other. And finally, Buka, which is internet portal. Now I have to say something very positive about internet portals. Buka is from Banja Luka, and they created a video clip against hatred speech called Hate Slovenia, because it sounds like Hey Slovenia, our former anthem, but now it's Hate Slovenia, Slavs. And it really puts in front the usage of the language, how we address each other in a pejorative way, Serbs, Bosnians, and Croats. And this was seen in 2 days by 5 million people.
Oh, the uses of language as a more inclusive tool, that's a very, very good point. make. And as an academic, I'd like to add that in media theory, there has been said to be an emotional or affective turn occurring. And I think we academics also have a role here to play. Scholars have become more interested in the role of emotions and affects that direct communication and the use of language, as you say. So to create a common and more inclusive language and an understanding of it is important, and this has to be made in collaboration with different stakeholders, of course. But dear panelists, dear audience, it would be nice to continue this discussion, but it's time to wrap up because our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, our dear panelists, for sharing your valuable insights today. Thank you all who asked questions and followed the discussion. Let's celebrate the World Press Freedom in the upcoming days and continue to develop new approaches that can make a difference. Thank you and have a nice day.
The way we create and consume information has changed significantly in recent years. Today, more than half of the world's population, including over 70% of all youth globally, are online. But how can we make sure that all information is used for public good? To promote dialogue and respect, support SDGs and democracy, and empower lifelong learners, instead of breeding hate speech, disinformation, fake news, and privacy violations. Media and information literacy is designed to combat these challenges and enable people to better benefit from positive opportunities. It gives individuals the skills to interpret and understand information, to think critically and click wisely, both on and offline. UNESCO has launched the second edition of the MIL curriculum for educators and learners. It provides a comprehensive framework for information, media, and digital competencies, so individuals can spot misinformation and engage positively in society. It's not just a framework, but a foundation to live by. To help make sense of ever-changing information-based influences by becoming media and information literate citizens, we are empowered to make the right choices. Learn more about media and information literacy and how it can support citizens to think critically and click wisely on and offline.
Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to this fifth and final webinar in the series of webinars designed to launch the UNESCO new resource, Media and Information Literate Citizens, Thinking Critically, Clicking Wisely. What a week it has been, and we have all you participants and partners and speakers, experts and practitioners to thank for a hugely successful week. UNESCO is so grateful. This resource is the second edition of the UNESCO Media and Information Literacy Curriculum for Educators and Learners. The event was opened last week, Friday, for those who have been following us, on the 23rd of April, by our UNESCO Director General or Deputy Director General, the Prime Minister of Serbia, the Vice President of the European Commission, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, among other officials, which indicate the high level of international attention and importance that is being played and showed to media and information literacy. Many of you might have been following the subsequent sessions over the past 4 or 5 days, started on Tuesday and also earlier today. The session addressed media and information literacy and disinformation, looking at issues around mail policies and the futures of mail. And the session that just ended addressed issues around media and information literacy for dialogue and anti-hate speech. We encourage you to see the videos for all these sessions, all right, online, and to connect and to share these videos with your network. They're available on the UNESCO media channels, social media channels, as well as the UNESCO MailClick social media channel. Today, we will continue this dialogue, and in some sense, we will be still continuing to look at the futures of media and information literacy by zooming in on what UNESCO calls media and information literacy by design. How can media, artificial intelligence, social media platforms, and libraries help? So I repeat the title for today, Media and Information Literacy by Design. How can media, digital communication platforms, artificial intelligence, and libraries help? Today also marks the start of the celebration of World Press Freedom Day 2021, under the theme, Information as a Public Good. Media and information literacy is one of the sub-themes of World Press Freedom Day 2021. The two other sub-themes being media viability and digital communications platform transparency. This year, 2021, also marks the 30 years since the Windhoek Declaration. The Windhoek Declaration is the outcome of a 1991 conference in Namibia, Windhoek, Namibia, where World Press Freedom Day found its origin. UNESCO invites you to see the website for World Press Freedom Day, again, to share that with your network and to join the sessions and the dialogue that will continue from today onwards into next week. Coming back to the theme for today, media and information literacy by design. The obvious question is, what do we mean by design? Now, when we consider media and information literacy as a means by which to stimulate people's critical thinking and about content, we would perhaps agree that there is power in words. There is power in words. Therefore, thinking critically about what is written or said empowers people all around the globe and at all levels of society. But media and information literacy is also about enabling people's discernment about how they interact with various content providers, whether it's library, media, digital communication platforms, archives, museums, and so on. Content providers are part of the design element
of the content mix, which includes information. And thus, content providers are also a part of the media and information literacy by design. As there is power in words, there is also power in design. As there is power in words, there is also power in design. This final session in the series will draw on the ones before. It will also draw on World Press Freedom Day sub-themes by considering how mail can enable media viability and stimulate internet companies' transparency. The session will investigate the potential role of design in promoting people towards media and information literacy learning. It will examine, for example, how digital communication companies, including social media, media organization, libraries, can design meal learning and access to information effectively and efficiently in everyday life, including low resource contexts, not only online and through technologies. The session will explore such innovative, interdisciplinary, multi-stakeholder, and transparent approaches in designing and expanding meal learning. And importantly, how can we do this without compromising people's rights to choose and their autonomy in general? How can we do this meal learning by design while respecting freedom of expression, while respecting people's rights to choose and their autonomy in general? Here with us today to unpack all this and to make media and information literacy by design more clearly understood by the public are 7 dynamic experts, leaders and opinion leaders and shapers in their different fields. And they're important part of the stakeholder groups of media and information literacy. First, we have with us Anna Merkovic. Anna Merkovic is the CEO and co-founder of the Digital Communications Institute. Anna, do you want to say a quick hello to our audience and friends who are connected with us on social media?
Hello, it's a great privilege to be here with you. Hello. Thank
you, Anna. We also have with us Lisa Hinchcliffe. I want to get that correctly. Lisa Hinchcliffe, professor and coordinator for information literacy services and instruction at the University of Illinois. Lisa, please say hello to our friends connected.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. And thank you, Alton and the organizers for the work to put this on and for inviting me to participate.
Also with us, Ibrahim Kushu. All right, he's a professor and founding director of nextminds.com. Like that, Next Minds, media and information literacy is about Next Minds, as it's also about the next normal and the new normal that we will face after the COVID-19. Ibrahim, please, you want to give a quick wave to our friends. Are you there, Ibrahim? I think you're muted.
Hi, everybody. Hello. I am really very happy to be part of these distinguished speakers, and thank you for giving this opportunity to speak about this significant topic.
Thank you. We know UNESCO is grateful. We also have with us Yesus Law. Yesus is a professor at the University of Veracruzana, and he's also the co-chair of the International Steering Committee for the UNESCO Middle Lands. Yesus, a word, please.
Hello, Alton. Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. And I would say happy Freedom of Press Day. I think it's an important human right. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Yesus. And last but not least, of course, we have Olia Boyar. She's the head of radio at the Asia Broadcasting Union. Olia.
Hello, and thank you very much. It's great to be among such a distinguished panel and friends. I look forward to the discourse.
Then coming to the penultimate, we have 2 more, big panel, but we will have an interactive session. Nathalie Laborde. She's the manager at the European Broadcasting Union Academy. Natalie.
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be among friends and with all of you. And thanks for this fantastic, Alton, fantastic initiative and great panel today. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And last but by no means least, this is the correct time to say it, is Mr. Renan Costello. He's the Senior Public Policy Manager of Twitter. We're really happy to have you, Renan. Please give us a wave.
Good to see you again, Alton. Thanks for having us. And hello, everyone from Dublin.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a very interactive dialogue. It's supposed to be a 1-hour session. We're already close to 10 minutes into the dialogue. We encourage you, our listeners, our friends, partners, part of the MIL community and family, to please share your observations in the chat, because we'll be highlighting some of your observations and comments in the outcomes of this week launching event. Voila, without further delay, we're going to get started. We hope to have 3 rounds of interactive exchange and questions to our panelists. We're going to start with Professor Ibrahim Kushu. Professor, you have written a book about artificial intelligence and media and information literacy. In fact, it was recently published, and you did that jointly with the UNESCO International Institute for Technology in Moscow, Russia. We're happy to partner with you from Next Minds. Could you open this dialogue and discussion by telling us what is the significance and implications of artificial intelligence for media and information literacy?
Thank you, Alton, for introducing the book. Actually, I was going to introduce it myself. All the discussions that I'm going to be proposing here briefly are based on this new book that we did in cooperation with the IIET in Moscow. And my colleagues has done a really great job. And I have some contribution, and also I am the editor of the book. And the book is available actually for download, free download, if anyone is interested in the links. I will share the link. I think I can't share it now, but I will share the link with anyone who is interested. Now, basically, in order to understand significance of artificial intelligence for MIL, we have to understand what are 3 important aspects of artificial intelligence. One is data use, and the other one is how artificial intelligence our artificial intelligence systems work to gather data from different sources in different formats and in different ways in a precise and directed manner. And thirdly, how artificial intelligence can disseminate the information or data or any other content to the right person in the right manner in a precise and personalized way. Now, about data, artificial intelligence tools has not really changed drastically since the 70s. What has happened was the technology supporting our AI, such as the processors, the speed of the processors, the bandwidth, and our ability to be able to collect, store, and work on the big data has improved. When we were doing our PhD in AI in the 90s, if we did work with like hundreds rows of data, we would be so happy. But now we can work on millions of data, and this data is pictures. So the AI tools and techniques are not necessarily so intelligent and so complicated and so wonderful, but our ability to work on the data is so improved. So that has a lot of implications for the MIL. So if you're going to use AI to empower the individuals or societies, you will need a large set of data, which is helping your purpose. Now, the other thing about AI is you can train systems, you can make AI system to learn how and where and and from which sources and which format you will collect data from various places in a high and speedy way. And once you collect this data, you will work on this data and then create new information out of this data. And then you can, again, like a gentle tailor, I call, like a gentle tailor, design what kind of content you will be disseminating and distributing to the audience. Now, what does this mean? This means if you, for example, if you want to create a conspiracy about the COVID vaccinations or vaccines, it is much, much easier if you use some AI techniques, because you can find out who would be your target audience and what kind of content you will send to this group of target audience as opposed to other group of audience, and what will be your precise content according to perhaps per individual basis. So if you want to create, if you want to convince people to go for a vaccination, you can do the same. So AI can help you in both ways. If you want to use it for good purposes, you will use AI to help you with your meal efforts very significantly. And if it is in the bad hands, it can be a dangerous tool. So I'll just introduce these issues for the moment as a significance of AI in meal, and we can discuss further issues later.
No, thank you so much for that, Ibrahim, and I do encourage, yes, thank you for keeping it short, because we will come back to you 2 more times. We want to rush through this first segment to make up for some time, but thank you for laying that framework so that our listeners can understand more clearly the powers of AI, how it has grown, and what are the implications for mail and to drive mail content online. We want to move rapidly to Miss Lisa Hinchliffe. All right, Lisa Hinchliffe, and we, again, a librarian, a library expert, and we are really happy to have this diverse groups of experts from different fields, both from information and library science, from technology, and from media, and of course from different international regional organizations and content providers. Really happy to have this diverse group. Lisa, could you speak to us a little bit, about, what are some examples, from the library perspectives? What are some examples of how media and information literacy education programs can help people to become more aware of what this academician, Safia Nobel, she calls it algorithms of oppression, quite a powerful term, especially as we're in the context of World Press Freedom Day, algorithms of oppression. Not sure what it means, and I think you hope that you will clarify to us, I see where it has to do with AI, how AI learns and reinforces bias. Could you speak to us a little bit about some examples that you're familiar with in this context?
Sure. Thank you, Alton. I'm going to bring forward another concept here of algorithmic literacy, which I think is a really important information literacy in our sort of panoply of literacies that we consider. And that's really the importance that through our educational programs, individuals become aware of how algorithms shape our information environments. And they shape it often in ways that we do not even realize that they are shaping it. And Safia Nobel's work did an immense amount of research and documentation showing that in particular Google, but other search engines are representing and representing the world to us in biased, particularly racist ways. And sexist, et cetera. And so taking all of, if you will, the worst of our sort of ways we interact with each other, encoding them into algorithmic rules that then present the world to us as a racist, sexist, et cetera place, and just in this iterative cycle of reinforcing these problematic structures. And so it's really incumbent upon us as information literacy educators, librarians working with this, to help peel back, if you will, to reveal the way that algorithms work and to ask questions about how power influences those decisions that are made and how these biases come into play. So as one example, on my own institution this year, I'm actually leading one of our Humanities Research Institute's research clusters on artificial intelligence and society. And as one spoke of our activities, we have been doing an AI, what we are calling the AI infodemic, looking at how these algorithmic rules are shaping our information environments. And it's really easy to poke at the internet and Google, but we're even this week looking at how even library subscription databases, scholarly journals are impacted and, if you will, polluted by the ways that information is structured by these algorithms. So it's a very important area that so many people are doing work on. This summer, we're actually going to have a speaker series, which is inviting people who are in the midst of doing their PhD. So our early career researchers who are often doing the cutting edge research on this. And so we'll be hosting an online speaker series at my institution to bring forward this really cutting edge research on this algorithmic literacy and the way it is feeding our AI infodemic.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Again, this importance of algorithmic literacy as an important notion of literacy that comes into the media and information literacy ecology, as we call it, trying to amalgamate many different types of literacies that are quite related. So thank you so much for that. Representation, algorithmic representation and how the media and digital communication platform represent the world. But it's not just the media and the digital communication platform, but it's us people who are behind this platform, driving and coding, represent the world. Is an important part of media and information literacy, and you can see more about that in the Media and Information Literacy curriculum that we mentioned earlier online. Voila, we move very rapidly to get a media perspective on this dialogue a little bit more. We have two persons here with us from the media, Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union and European Broadcasting Union. We're going to go first with Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, Ms. Olia Bohar, head of radio. Olia, could you please, give us the perspective on, you work a lot with public service media in the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union. How can public service media served by the ABU, aware of the theory and practice of media and information literacy? How are they aware of the knowledge? What knowledge do they have of AI and new technologies to meet and to work and engage with their audiences? Do they see media and information literacy as an important part of their bottom line as they remain on the front line of information? Could you speak to us a little bit about that, how your certain public service providers engage with their viewers and listeners in the context of media and information literacy?
Thank you, Alton. And yes, it's important to speak from the media component of the media and literacy side of things. So the Asia Pacific region is home to 2/3 of the world's population. So it's extremely diverse in every way possible, especially when it comes to access to technology or the digital divide. The challenges of applying and aligning technologies are huge. Public service broadcasters are experiencing expanding remits. They are supposed to be ubiquitous on all platforms. They are in social media everywhere, but they have shrinking resources. There's also an age-old challenge of frequent disparity between the two of the pillars of public service broadcasting: inform versus entertain. Audiences often don't prefer content that educates them or tries to change their biases, no matter where they're from. Public service media can't be everything to everyone, so we must constantly choose not only what to broadcast, but what to leave out. And in some countries, PSM are not independent of government, so we must tread sometimes uneven paths to serve citizens. So therefore, the key issue for all broadcasters right now, wherever we happen to be, is trust, gaining and maintaining the trust of their audiences. Now, of course, successful public service media organizations in the Asia Pacific have carved out a place for themselves on the new platforms and have successfully chased new audiences with at least some of their programming. This means that there is a presence for truth and accurate news and information to counterbalance misinformation and to educate audiences, to check facts and compare viewpoints. I mean, the ABU works with all of their members across the board to do this, but I have to keep saying that the central issue for all of us right now is trust. And that is to maintain the trust in the media in general against the backdrop of everything that's been going on, topped off by the pandemic over the last few years, and to actually keep the trust in their public service media. I mean, the Reuters Institute has just released a report saying that although most people spend most of their time on social media, they don't trust social media, but they still trust their public service broadcasters, but they don't spend a lot of time engaging with them. So that's the dichotomy that we're working against. So in any educational kind of resources that we produce, or in any education that we ourselves impart, we must balance those two and try to get on the equation, on the right side of the equation in terms of how to engage people and how to keep them with us, how to trust, how to gain trust of the citizens and the audience. And then, of course, we can roll out a lot of this information. And MIL is one of the huge pillars of everything that we do in the Asia Pacific region.
Okay, thank you so much, Alia, for those introductory statement. That media perspective is very important. We want to take a beeline to our partner, Twitter, Renan Castillo, the senior policy advisor of Twitter. Twitter is a good partner of UNESCO, who has really committed to promoting media and information literacy and making meaningful attempts to support those type of programs. We are thankful to have partnered with Twitter to revamp and to revise the Twitter guide, teaching and learning with Twitter. Not quite often that we will get a big platform, opening up and say, tell us what we should be doing and how we should be doing it right. We're hoping to hear from you. We're not just going to listen, but we're going to take your content and we want to use it and we're going to promote that. So grateful to have you, Ronan. Please, the first question to you, can you tell us in this same light of the discussions that have ensued, how is Twitter using AI to surface credible and authoritative content and information, which is one of the key remit of media and information literacy, information verification?
Thank you. And thanks for the kind words about the partnership. It's been great working with you and the team for, it's supposed to be 3-4 years now, at least. But to your question, this question is top of mind as well, because I was at an event this morning. It was more of an Irish context, but it was specifically about COVID-19, the vaccine rollout nationally and internationally, and the role that media and social media has played in either encouraging or discouraging people from going to get their vaccine, and the faith in vaccine or lack of faith in vaccine efficacy. So this session is almost feels directly related to that. Through Twitter's efforts in the AI space, the machine learning space, as Ibrahim said, a lot of this work is dependent on pattern identification, right? On analyzing data sets and having a clearer view of credible actors and good faith actors on the platform whose content should be upranked, should be amplified, because they are a credible news organization, a credible NGO, a credible public health institute, etc. So Twitter has deliberately, for example, let's just situate this in the context of the last 18 months or so. Twitter has deliberately sought to amplify voices that might have credible information for around the COVID-19 pandemic. We have done that by, for example, recently, say for example, this is World Health Immunization Week, and in several countries across the world, we launched a prompt at the top of people's timeline. So if you logged into the Twitter app, at the top of your timeline, you saw a box that said, that had a peace sign in it, and it said it was World Immunization Week, and that you should go to the CDC in the United States, the NHS in the UK, and the HSE it's called here in Ireland, for credible information about the vaccine. And so we are, I guess, in that sense, engaging in what behavioral economists would call nudges, right? We're building it into the product to try to amplify credible and reliable information over actors who may be trying to spread disinformation. And the last thing I would say around that, about disinformation, is that over the last 12 months, we have expanded our harmful, misleading information policy to include harmful misinformation around COVID-19, and indeed harmful misinformation with respect to the COVID-19 vaccines. And through machine learning, we have been able to challenge and in a lot of cases suspend around 12 million accounts globally who were trying to manipulate the conversation on Twitter to get these topics trending around anti-vax, around, you know, COVID is a hoax and things like that. So that work is very, very much reliant on machine learning and basically pattern identification.
Thank you so much for that, Ronan. Important point there. Some nudges, you know, this is the media and information literacy by design, and how we can nudge people towards media and information literacy learning. We want to get the sort of a national perspective, you know, from one of our chairs, one of the UNESCO chairs in Serbia, Anna Merkovic. We're really thankful to Serbia UNESCO, who has been a real champion throughout the last 18 months that has resulted in this new resource, the second edition of the Media and Information Literacy Curriculum. You know, many international experts events and regional consultations and real commitment, and we're thankful for that. Anna, could you give us a little bit of your perspective? The Republic of Serbia has developed a national AI policy and strategy, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's for the period 2020 to 2025, you know, they developed some sort of AI policy and strategy. What is your perspective? Could you tell us a little bit about that AI policy and strategy? And then, importantly, what is your perspective on governments considering the integration of media and information literacy learning, media and information literacy by design, that is, in their AI policies and strategies?
Thank you. Yes, you're completely right. Serbia adopted IA strategy as well as media strategy for the same period, 2020 to 2025. And it's within the media strategy and its action plan that the whole chapter and set of measures and actions are devoted to improvement of media literacy. It forces, for example, continuation of empowering of media and the digital competencies of journalists and media professionals, as well as public administration. I think this is really important because I am deeply in the topic and I know how important it is to empower all the people, because, you know, media literacy and digital media literacy, it's considering all of us who are participating media space these days, and it's everywhere. We are all on multi-screen and we are sharing and notice and we are seeing everything that is going on around us. So it also predicts development and of multi-sector program for further development of media and information literacy and media environment and coordination of different stakeholders. And this is really important to have that synergy of multi-stakeholder approach. And we had that several times actually in Serbia. Last December, we have one debate on artificial intelligence and freedom of expression organized by our Ministry of Culture and Information, but also OSCE mission to Serbia, Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, the Independent Association of Journalists of Serbia, Online Media Association, etc. So it is really important to be all together in this topic. And I also have to mention that almost a year and a half ago, I was participating in one amazing workshop led by Ibrahim, and it was about information and media considering artificial intelligence. And it was a great pleasure to be participant and to be one who is educated and one which awareness is raised up. So we learned a lot of things, and I think that the workshop was an inspiration for publication, artificial intelligence, media and information literacy, human rights and freedom of expression, but I hope Ibrahim will say much more about it. So yes, we are working a lot. I am a part of a lot of projects considering digital media literacy and how to use artificial intelligence in order to empowering all people, all citizens, and to be much more in this topic, because that is the only way to think critically.
Thank you so much, Anna. The multi-stakeholder approach, really important. Crossing of policies, I heard from you, that we need that crossing and intersection of policies, not just, one group or one ministry working, but all these different areas, media policies, access to information policies, technology policies, merging with mill policies. Very important point. Thank you for that. We're moving rapidly along. Again, to get another side of the Atlantic, Nathalie, from the European Broadcasting Union, Nathalie Laborde, to get another perspective, again, also from the media. The European Broadcasting Union, I believe, is perhaps the second largest, if I'm maybe correct, maybe African Union of Broadcasters is larger. Broadcasting union in the world, but really happy to have you, Nathalie. Could you share with us, again, the perspective of EBU on the topic? And my first question to you is, what could journalism institutions do to, by design, promote media and information literacy learning in people's normal interaction with the content of these organizations, sorry. So what could journalism institutions do by design to promote media learning as people interact with the content of these different journalism institutions?
Mm-hmm. Alton, that's a very, very interesting topic. I'm going to propose something is really we have to change paradigm. And I'm going to do a metaphor because I love metaphors. I don't know if you know this worldwide movement called slow food. And slow food was born in Italy. And the idea was really to enhance the taste, the origin of the food, and the producers. And what we have to do is we have to enhance what I call slow journalism. And what is slow journalism? We have been working a lot on this, and it's really taking a lot of importance. And what is slow journalism? And like slow food, it is respect of words, respect of images. Where do the news come from? What is the richness of the views and the progression of the story? So it is something I can tell you that is really, really important, and that can really attract what we call the Gen Z, the new generation of audiences, which are crucial because they get away from our news. And if we want them, the young people, to be interested in what news is, we have to really respect this. So we have to, we have to eat in another way. It's not enough to speak about climate change and whatever, but what do we do concretely? So let's start by eating properly. So in the news, exactly the same. So let's try to do news in a new way, which is slow journalism.
Thank you. So well said. Wow, that was powerful. Love that. Slow food. Let's eat properly, and that's what we want through media and information literacy. Let's eat healthy information. So thank you for that. Origin, meaning, ethics, and perhaps probably could add a fourth one, destiny. what audience and with what purpose. Origin, meaning, ethics, destiny. Thank you so much for that. Let's rush to Yesus Law, our good partner, Yesus Law, to close this first round. Yesus, you are one of the co-chairs of the International Steering Committee for UNESCO Middle and also professor. The first question, what are the main AI actions that libraries and educational institutions can take to support media and information literate citizens in democracy? I want to just repeat that. What are the main actions that libraries and educational institutions, from your perspective, can take to support media and information literate citizens in a democratic society?
Well, Alton, this is a complex question, but there is an author, well, a group of authors head by Helvin, is the last name. I tried to write it down on the chat, but it's close. So I can send it later. Well, I think universities or any educational institution, as well as libraries, should take the principles that this researcher proposes in order to have a healthy democratic society. And I will not go through the 10 principles that he mentions, but I will just give you the most important ones. One is to promote information self-determination. It's easy to say, obviously, but media and information literacy has to be transformed, enhanced, in order to foster information self-determination of our citizens. The second one that I found quite important for MIL objectives is information pollution reduction, to provide training to citizens to reduce information pollution. The other one that is quite important is to teach, to help citizens to use information filters. This is quite important because we are being bombarded with information, data, media, and so on. And we need to learn how to filter information. The other one is to promote collective intelligence. In other words, to build, a community knowledge. And the last one, that if it's quite well, is to be a responsible citizen, to have a responsible citizen behavior. These principles are just 6. There are 10 of them that you can read in this chapter, are very good because these principles can guide our media and information literacy action, as well as any institution that is aiming to have independent thinking citizens. And I would recommend something else. Lisa mentioned algorithmic literacy. It's quite important. We need to learn how all these engines, platforms shape their information and shape our way of thinking. And Ibrahim mentioned that how data is important. The key control of what you call, information by design or artificial intelligence use is based on data. We need to provide data literacy, data training to students, to citizens. Once we lose the power of our privacy, our data, we are under control of any search engine, any government. Governments, for example, are moving towards having more control of our data. And this is something that we need to embrace in information literacy, either in libraries or at an educational institution at large.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Law. Thank you so much, Yesus, for that. Losing our privacy, losing control. Maybe Ibrahim could respond to you a little bit on a couple of those points that you highlighted from both Ibrahim and Lisa. Ibrahim, could we come back to you? Could you share with us what, in your perspective, are one or two of the latest AI-relevant technology or applications that could help or hinder our media and information literacy efforts?
It's probably muted.
Sorry, I was again muted. Firstly, let me mention about the meeting that we had in Belgrade. This meeting, we did a training of the government professionals on media and artificial intelligence, media and information literacy, freedom of expression, and the human rights. This was important for two reasons, at least. One of them is, for the first time, I saw a government or body, the ministry, and also government professionals being ahead of other governments to step into this field. This was very, very impressive for me. And also an example for the other governments. And this is important for capacity building of the government professionals and the journalists and other participants. We were more than 40 people there, for key instrumental people for the government, for the country. And secondly, this is important for the government as a regulator, because regulation of our field, the new emerging technologies, when it is especially related to the human rights, freedom of expression, and privacy, as you said, is so difficult because regulators have two basic problems. One, our field changes so fast and it's technologically very complex. So regulators do not really have the resources to follow and to get into all these expertise. And by nature, regulators are slow. So I was very much impressed and to see the Serbian government taking a lead on this and being an example to the other countries. Now, in terms of understanding artificial intelligence, we have to understand.
Ibrahim, please, if you could wrap up in 30, 45 seconds, because we need to advance this round. So please, let's keep it short. Yes.
Okay, very briefly. Artificial intelligence is an abstraction of the rules from a large data set. They are not algorithmic systems. So looking at AI systems as an algorithm is misleading, because algorithm means step-by-step solution to a problem. So we don't really solve problems with AI through algorithms. We abstract the rules containing in the data to a structure, artificial neural network or genetic algorithms or something like that, a model of AI. So therefore, it is more than algorithms, so more critical in meal education and meal efforts that we have to really take into consideration. Finally, I'll just give one word about, for example, you have a deep fake, and then you want to let the larger audience about how critical this video is, and it is a fake. Now we can use all these traditional methods and we can do, social media and other things, but AI and biotechnology is improving in such a way that now we can transfer information of a brain from a brain of a person to another person. Now this sounds like a fiction, but the human experiments are now confirmed. This is an area of implementation of biotechnology and artificial intelligence called brain interfaces, like Elon Musk using those electrodes to transfer information directly to a machine. Now we have brain-to-brain connections. Now, what does this mean? If you educate one, can you believe how many people can you educate? It's almost limitless. Whoever is connected to your system. So what does this mean for meal education? Please think about it. So I have to speak very briefly, but I want to mention that there are huge potential to use these technologies for good, and also that may really hinder our efforts in the media and information.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Media and information literacy, peer education through AI. We heard you said. We want to come back to Natalie Laborde from the European Broadcasting Union. Correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, I believe that EBU works both with private and public sector media. One famous expert, I don't remember the name of the person now, observed that, and I quote, "Transparency is the new objectivity for journalism." transparency is the new objectivity for journalism. And so coming back to your point earlier, Natalie, about the way media should operate in preparing their content, how they should look at origin, meaning, ethics, and I added destiny and purpose to what you said. Could you speak to us a little bit as to, how could media organizations like those who are members of the European Broadcasting Union inspire development towards enriching content and programming so that people can actually come to understand the origins and the shape of news? How could this happen? What can be done? What needs to be done?
Thanks a lot. Very interesting, as always, Alton, for the questions. I think transparency is a public service value. It's one of the 6 values of the EBU. So transparency, absolutely yes. And it's also transparency and what was said before by Olia, trust and accountability. So when we have said this, so how do we put these words into action? How do we walk the talk in a way? I think the way we are using multi-platforms, so we don't have anymore only TV, radio. We have all the social platforms, which are really extremely important. So I would say the way of making it is really, again, by showing what I said earlier, the respect to our audiences. We are really more and more not only demanding, but they want to understand. And the one of the words we say for the young generation is the authenticity. What we have to do has to be authentic. So the way we present our program on the web, for example, on the digital platforms, the design, you were mentioning design, Alton, in your questions, the design of the content is crucial. And by using design, and as you know, by design, it's the success of the best brands. Design has to be very important. So by design, you show if it is clear, if it's transparent, if it is well put off, if it is well prepared. And even if you use the Twitter, the Reels, the Twitch, all the things of the new games platform, whatever, if you are very clear, very articulate, there is a lot of production values behind this, then you have a lot of success, and then you understand, and your audience understands very well. So I think there are ways, but I would say we have to go back to the fundamentals of what is good journalism. Like slow food, what is good journalism? It has to have taste. It has to know where it comes from. You have to have real people. So we have to go back to, I would say, backwards in a way. Forget the industrialization of news. Let's go back to more authentic news. And it takes more time, but thanks to AI, and I agree with my colleagues here in the panel, AI can help in certain automatization of the works. So we can help to create maybe more time and more opportunities to create better news.
Thank you so much for that, Natalie. Again, on slow foods, thank you for that. We want to move to Professor Lisa Hinchcliffe again. Professor, you spoke about the library context, algorithmic literacy as a part of the mill ecology. I wanted for you to speak a little bit about partnerships between journalists and librarians. You know, sometimes we can work in our silos, and today we're in a converged world, you know, where, well, quite frankly, it's not just converging, but sometimes colliding, you know, in the mashup of information, media, and digital ecology. So could you speak to us a little bit, very rapidly, Professor Hinchcliffe, on how libraries and journalists could partner in this important work to promote media and information literacy by design?
Yes, I'm really thrilled to have that question. Actually, at the Gap Mill, when we were calling it Gap Mill conference during Mill Week 2018, Laura Saunders at Simmons University and I presented the research that we had done with a federal grant here in the United States under the title Know News, as in know your news, like be smart about news, which actually specifically inquired into how librarians and journalists could forge partnerships around the issues of mis and disinformation. And so I'll just point to our white paper, which is freely available as a result of that grant project. And I'm sure the organizers can send out a link later if I provide it. So I'll do that. But we had about 60 people come together and conceptualize different approaches, some of which we're pairing together to maybe even help our communities be citizen journalists and sort of move even our learners into the role of the journalist using good information resources partnered through a library. Looking at how libraries could better support journalists with quality information sources that they could rely on in their reporting. And of course, also looking at libraries as an outlet for quality news sources. And so, I mean, it's a white paper, there's like 30 pages in there, so I can't go into depth right now given our time limitations. But I think this is a really important thing. And Laura and I continue our work on collaboration and what it takes to do robust collaboration. So I'd welcome, not surprisingly, collaborators on this look at collaboration.
Thank you so much for that. Collaboration, between libraries and journalists, between librarians and libraries and media organizations. There's some good examples here in France with the center, CLEMI, the Center for Media and Information Literacy here in France, work between media libraries and schools. Also some good example in Sweden through the Swedish Media Council, working with some, if I recall well, some 40,000 libraries across Sweden, and a lot happening for MIL through that channel. On that note, we want to bring in the technological side, because it's not just partnerships with media and libraries, but also with digital communication. So we want to go back to Ronan Castillo, our partner, senior policy manager in Twitter. Ronan, could you speak to us a little bit on that count of collaboration and partnerships and linking up different initiatives across discipline and across stakeholder groups? How does social media promote media and information literacy through product design? What sort of product can social media develop to push MIL by design?
Yeah. So I think this actually goes to something that Olya said about trust. I think Twitter is definitely concerned about the trust that users feel that they can attach to information they see on the platform. Now, that goes against the perception that companies like Twitter or platforms like Twitter and other ones are purely optimizing for engagement, regardless of the consequences. I don't believe that's true, because that would be a bad long-term play for a company like Twitter, because ultimately users would tire of that. They would see what was happening. They wouldn't trust what they saw on the platform anymore, and they would just move away to a different platform. And so a lot of what we're doing from the point of view of partnerships and also product design is actually amplifying the content coming from, the material coming from what you call like legacy news organizations, be it credible TV stations, credible newspapers globally. I mentioned public health agencies, etc. Be it through the verification of accounts or through the prominent placement of the material that they have produced, the journalism they have produced in trending topics, in our curation of tweets and things like that. For example, I mentioned this previously in a conversation with you, Alton. We have a prompt now on the platform where if you try to retweet someone else's tweet that contains a link to an article, but you haven't read the article, we will now say, you haven't opened that link. You can't possibly know what's in it. Do you want to take a moment to read it before you share it? It kind of goes to the slow journalism point that Natalie was making there. It's like, let's not judge the success of a tweet by how many thousands of times it's been retweeted in 10 minutes. Just like slow down, read it first, and then consider sharing it. So it's kind of like a product development that has directly pushed back against the notion that the only successful content is the clickbait content. And the only measure of its value is how many times it's been shared. So in that way, I think we're trying to elevate content from news organizations. And that's not even to mention, because I know we're pushed on time, but that's not even to get into the work we're doing around online safety or media literacy with organizations like UNESCO, and I think the key thing there is something you said, Alton, is like knowing what you're good at and what you're not so good at, or what you don't know about. When we talk to you about media and information literacy, I'm not a media and information literacy expert, so I'm not going to pretend to be. And so we were very deferential to you and the content that you wanted to include in that partnership.
Thank you so much for that. I know you have a lot more to say. We're a little bit strained for time, but thank you so much for that. Slow down and read, slow down, stop scrolling so rapidly, slow a little bit and read. I like to talk affectionately about reading The Forgotten Pearl of Great Price, and media and information literacy by design can change that. We want to go back to Anna Merkovic. Anna, you are, again, CEO and founder of the Digital Communication Institute in Serbia. Could you share with us a little bit some examples of from your organization's work on AI? What is your organization doing in terms of work about the AI and how AI can empower citizens to think critically about information?
My institute is a partner of Irish Institute, Digital Marketing Institute from Dublin, and we are organizing their programs for Balkanese country, for ex-Yugoslavia, actually, territory. And through this institution, I'm dealing with empowering businesses in thinking critically and how to use digital media properly in order to empower their businesses. But also as a psychologist dealing with digital communication, I'm working a lot for UNICEF as a consultant for digital violence, trying to make this prevention part of problem of cyberbullying, sexting, grooming, sextortion, pornography. Through Ministry of Culture and Information, I'm doing as a consultant, as an expert on this handbook for media literacy in pre-university education. So there are a lot of things I'm doing at the moment, but the main thing is that we have to make people aware of media literacy and why it is important to participate smartly and to think critically. And after education and after raising awareness, we have chance to engage them, to think more deeply about this topic and to consider this topic as relevant for their life and for participating in this huge media space. So a lot of really interesting projects are going on, and I'm really feel really happy to be part of all these projects. And I hope that everything is just move on much more and faster.
Thank you so much for that, Anna. Trend-setting work there, not just in Serbia, but connecting with other countries in the region. Olia Buyar from Asia Pacific Union, you spoke to us earlier about practices around male AI and new technologies and getting feedback from viewers and listeners and readers. Could you speak a little bit more on that earlier? Could you talk to us about how can organizations like the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, representing some 2/3 of the world populations, as you pointed out, what can organizations like yours and public service media do to increase media and information literacy to their end users? Can you share with us what can be done?
Yes, I just wanted to also, mention, I just react to a couple of things that have been said, particularly in terms of educating and using all this technology, wonderful technology that I love myself, to educate younger people. And I keep coming back to the fact that younger people are actually very well educated on how to use media, and time after time research proves that they actually use it much better than middle-aged people. So sometimes we have to be careful about where we go and with education, and certainly with the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, we believe that we should use all our levers to educate on MIL. So, I mean, schools and libraries have been teaching information literacy for many years. And they're now ramping up to teach these new elements of awareness and MIL. But MIL needs to be a whole of society issue supported by education in every setting possible. We believe very much in partnerships and collaboration. We do a lot of industry collaboration and partnerships and with civil society, with UNESCO. And, you know, I mean, we're just talking about it here. And I mean, I'd love to partner up with Twitter for here's an opportunity. But just in terms of getting some of these tools out through our journalists to the people that they're talking to. Because a lot of, in our region, it's not just about knowing what the tools are, it's about actually educating the journalists who don't always get that education. And it's not just we're not talking about the sort of the well-resourced people. We're talking about broadcasters who are in community broadcasting. We're talking about broadcasters who are in Nepal, in India, in Bangladesh, in areas that are unreachable by a lot of this technology. However, they use social media, and social media is a very important component of everything that they do and where they learn to use a lot of media. So I think collaboration with technology platforms as well as civil societies is actually the best way of getting through all of the barriers that people have against media and against, you know, fake news and fake media, and start to break that down, because it really only is when we start to work together on these things that we will break through the barriers, not just to the citizens, but actually to the audiences at large.
Thank you so much for that, Olia. From the EBU. We are 7 minutes over what is supposed to be an hour-long session. We had planned one more round of questions. If there is consensus, we will go rapidly through that final round. If our audience will bear with us, and if our speakers agree, we will go rapidly through that final round. Do we have consensus in the context of freedoms? So that we do not impose from our UNESCO standpoint. The discussion has been very, very rich. And thank you so much again, Olia, for that. We cannot forget rural and remote communities. You know, still we have close to 50% of the world population. Well, now I think the last statistics in January was saying that close to 59% of the population of the world are on the internet. So still 41% without access to the internet and digital technology. So how do we reach them? With media and information literacy by design, because certainly, though they do not have connection online, this information is still reaching them. And so we need to contemplate that, and partnerships with digital communication companies. One thing that UNESCO is trying to do, and we're working on now, and we're looking for more partnerships for that, and hope that some of those who are connected connected as listeners and partners, but also as speakers on this panel, will help us to develop a radio-based media and information literacy massively open online course. So it's a MOOC in quotes, but it's radio-based. You know, of course, you know, to reach marginalized groups. We're not online, but then the content can also be used as podcast online. So we're looking for partnerships on that. So please contact us. We're going to wrap up with this final round. We're going to go with Yesus Law. And we're asking the speakers to speak really in a minute to 90 seconds in answering the final question. So Yesus, we're going to start with you. And if you could tell us a little bit, and we have said it, I think most of the speakers have spoken about this topic, about the role of, well, a little bit, some speakers have spoken about it, but the role of intuition in assessing AI-generated data and information. We talk a lot about critical thinking, and we need to complement that critical thinking with, I think someone mentioned emotional and social literacy. But what's the role of intuition in assessing AI-generated data and information, and how is MIL related to that?
Well, intuition plays a very important
briefly.
Well, intuition plays a very important role, because when we get all these media messages, we do not do analytical thinking. It's based on intuition. And intuition, it is also generated or decided by feelings. So when we see an ad or an advert, we decide first on using our intuition. And our intuition is a very subjective way to see things. So taking the example of Natalie, we need to take the principle of slow food. Whenever you get an ad, take a second to think about it. I know it is difficult because we get this overdose of media messages. So developing intuition is crucial for society. And intuition is not a simple thing. It is based on our values and on our information base. So we need to strengthen those two elements.
Thank you so much for that very important discussion, which we have more time to get into it. But I think Lisa Hinchliff, I mean, all professors connected and executives, so please forgive us. We're in an informal discussion here. So Lisa Hinchliff, could you build on that a little bit and talk about the potentials of AI and technology to support development of mindset? And I think that's a little bit some of what Yestas was speaking about. One social media platform is promoting what they're calling inoculation theory, and using inoculation theory to expose people to certain type of content, and so that when they come across it, they will understand and better able to resist it. Mindset is very important in how we become critical about information, because we have a predetermined mindset. So could you talk to us a little bit about how AI and technology could support the development of MIL mindset, that shift from our preconceived mindset to a media and information literacy mindset? Lisa.
I mean, I think in the way that they're going to support it is our recognition that we really are best served by not relying on it because we're seeing all of the problems of it. And I guess what I would just reinforce with maybe Jesus's comments is I would bring in the concept of as well heuristics. In everyday life, actually even in scholarly life, we have a set of we have our own heuristics that we use to make decisions. I think it's more than our gut. It's also our past experiences. It's the sense we develop over time of who we trust about which. And one thing that we haven't really had a chance, of course, to discuss here much today is the notion of reliance on experts. And that actually one way technology could serve us well here is something that would hopefully be able to bring to the forefront who is an expert in a particular topic. Because the reality is, as an information consumer, I can only be an expert on so many things. And yet I'm asked to engage with all sorts of topics all day long. And so a lot of how I do that is by heuristically saying, I'm going to look to experts. I'm going to say, like, this is my doctor, this is the person who's in charge of this policy area. And I need to be critical about that, but that's really a way of sort of maximizing my ability to judge information by, if you will, outsourcing the judgment of the information to those that I have judged to be experts. So I think there might be some potential for AI to help us see who is an expert in a given field. But this is also still going to be highly problematic if we don't have that algorithmic literacy I talked about.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa, and thank you for being brief. I know that's a lot more you can share, changing our preconceived mindset with a media and information literate mindset. Let's move rapidly then to Ibrahim Kush. Again, Ibrahim, final question. Could you please tell us in 60 seconds, what does the future look like for media and information literacy in the presence or with the presence of artificial intelligence? Ibrahim, I think you're muted. 1 minute, please.
Sorry.
Yeah. What does the future look like for media and information literacy with the presence of AI?
Yeah, thank you. AI and the relevant technologies are developing very fast. As I gave you an example, not that only we are able to deal with large volumes of data and process it and deliver it in a very intelligent and precise way, and also predictive, when to deliver it and to who to deliver it. All these technologies are moving very fast, as also working with other disciplines like biotechnology. I briefly mentioned that this, brain-to-brain transfer of knowledge, that influences a lot of field. And so the experiments, human experiments, have concluded on this, that one person, 3 people can get together knowing only partial information about, say, a video game. But when they come together, three of them, they can do this task very easily. So when you have an information, partial information, distributed to everywhere, you can use this for meal education very effectively. So the development of technology is promising in one way, but also a little bit worrying. We have to be careful. So the worrying part is 2. One of them is about ownership. The other one is about the memory of these technologies. The ownership of technologies means that who holds this technology and the data, large volumes of data? Whoever is holding it is bringing their bias to it. How can we make sure that whoever the owners of these technologies are regulated or directed not to bring in their bias, but to make use of these technologies for the betterment of empowerment of the people as a whole? The memory is the data, especially for artificial intelligence. Where the data is collected, from where, which sources?
30 seconds, 20 seconds.
10, I need just 10 seconds. So the memory is the data. So however the data is collected and wherever it is collected and however it is being processed influences how these new technologies and artificial intelligence will produce output. And fortunately, we are not able to simulate intuition or what Lisa mentioned, what was the, Lisa, remind me? The
heuristics?
Yes, heuristics. We are not able to simulate advanced heuristics and intuition. So artificial intelligence, given the today's technology, will never be able to equal to the human. It will surpass human efforts, say in chess or other games, bounded problems, but will never be human or more than human.
All right, thank you so much for that. I'm sorry about that interruption. When your mom called, you don't want to ignore the call, So my mommy was calling just now, so please forgive me. She called more than once. I thought it was urgent, and voila. So please forgive me. Yes. So we're going to move rapidly along, and I think Yessos Law can just build very rapidly on that issue of ownership and memory. I'm sorry to cut you short. We just want to wrap up in 5 minutes. So please let us run this lap very, very fast. We're coming to a close. So please forgive me. There's a lot that we want to say, but the time is short. So Yessos, can you just build a little bit on that for 60 seconds on the point that was made just now, and how libraries can complement this AI-driven type of assessment of data and information in terms of promoting MIL competencies by design and delivery through libraries?
Well, it is difficult to give an answer in 60 seconds. But
yes, I know, but let's do the best.
We need to transform to enhance our media and information literacy trainings that we provide, so that we use the same technology that we're trying the same technology that our users are benefiting or are using. In other words, if artificial intelligence is a challenge, artificial intelligence is also the opportunity to provide training. Now, don't ask me how to do it, because in order to do it, you really need the resources and you need the training. And I think we as librarians need to be trained to really take advantage of this development. Everything is dialectic. Everything that gives you a good thing also gives you a bad side. It depends on you. And this is something that we have to train.
No, thank you. Very well said in 60 seconds. Thank you so much, Yes. Anna Merkovic, final question from you. What suggestions can you give in terms of innovative ideas for mail by design moving forward from your digital communication perspective? Very briefly, 1 minute.
Very briefly, the ideas are creative, but if we want to be innovative, we have to think how to implement that creative ideas. And that's why the multi-stakeholder approach is necessary, and engagement of different development partners in order to reach different target groups and to make this idea possible to make an impact. And that's all.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. We talk a lot about technology. Let us get a final perspective from Olia. We are back to focusing on citizens, the people. What can the rest of civil society actors do to help public service media meet their responsibilities through media and information literacy? What can civil society, coming back to the people, do with media and information literacy to help public service broadcasters to meet their responsibility? Olia, can you give us the ABU perspective?
Yes, I was just going to say that actually the future, as far as I'm concerned, is looking very bright. It was only a couple of years ago that the media holus bolus around the world got labeled as fake news media. And that was actually a huge wake-up call for all of us to be able to go back to where we came from and say, why do our audiences not trust us? And I think that whole thing has generated a lot of work in terms of trust and what do we do about that? How do we reach our citizens, our audiences? And I think the way we do that is to collaborate and partner with platforms, with civil societies, and get to our audiences wherever they are, and via many platforms, and in a way that they trust. So it's not just about what we think that we should be doing, but it's about actually reaching people where they are and how they want to be reached, and using technology that they want. So I think we have to be much more clever, as Anna was saying, and do it in a very complex but simplified way to get to the people that we want to.
Thank you so much for that, Olia. I'll summarize by saying media and information literacy to build trust in media. Could you share some examples with us, Nathalie Laborde from European Broadcasting Union? Could you share some examples of what EBU is doing to engage with its viewers and listeners and readers in the context of transparency and objectivity, and using mail in that respect?
So I will speak, Alton, quickly about what EBU Academy is doing. I think we really need what I call a skill revolution. We need to upskill and reskill our guys, our people, our journalists. So we speak a lot about, we do a lot of training on the computer-assisted reporting, for example. To help our journalists, we do things about programming, how to do face recognition, visual recognition. So as I mentioned, also social journalism, solution journalism. So thanks to digital, we can do e-learning, and it helps a lot. And even if people don't have a computer, they can follow this on their phone. So I think if you really want to have a first level of awareness and information, it works. But we can also really develop excellent skills in order to push all this very important discussion further, and use also the brand, for example, of UNESCO, which is a good brand.
Thank you so much for that, Nathalie Laborde from EBU. And let us close with our partner from Twitter, Renan Castillo, Senior Policy Manager. Renan, could you share a little bit of some examples of how social media companies are working with civil society and academic experts to improve the deployment of AI and promote media and information literacy?
Yeah, I'd probably go a step further and include probably governments and other public agencies and institutions there. I mentioned this morning that this morning I was participating in a discussion that was exclusively focused on COVID-19 and the vaccine rollout and people's acceptance of the vaccine. And what struck me there was that this time last year, we left our offices on a Wednesday, and by Friday, we were on a conference call with the Department of Health along with all the other stakeholders that were addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. So technology was seen as a public health partner, or rather, it was demanded that technology be a public health partner and be part of the effort there and not siloed in industry. And I think applying the same approach here, if we're a public health partner in the actual health space, we should also be a public information partner with civil society groups, with academics, with broadcasting organizations, with newspapers, etc., and not view the two as siloed, because our platform is reliant on the presence of journalists and news organizations, for the benefit of our users. So it's in our interest to amplify that content and to strengthen the relationship.
Thank you so much. It has been a marathon. We have, created a melting pot of knowledge in the past 90 minutes. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your minds with us. It was real meeting of minds. Thanks to all our listeners, friends, partners who were patient with us. We have immortalized this knowledge. The video will be there. Many will be able to see it long into the future, way beyond the COVID-19 crisis. We have theorized, we have philosophized a little bit, and now we have to go forward and pragmatize, do what we know we have to do and must do, and ensure that it's practical and it's concrete and it touch and transform lives. Thank you so much. UNESCO is very grateful and wish we had time to get closing words from you. Normally we take 10 seconds vox pop from each of the speaker, but I think we are out of time to do it. So let's end on this note. Really, thank you so much. Looking forward to continuing the work. World Press Freedom Day continues into tomorrow and next week. Let's continue the dialogue there. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.